Hi everyone, it's Jennifer from Fiberflux. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a finger knit braided scarf. This is a super easy project and it's very kid friendly, and you don't need any special tools. All you're going to need is some yarn. I use 3 colors. You can use 1 color or 2 color, but for the full braided effect, I think 3 colors works really well. This is super bulky yarn and it's called Lion Brand's Hometown USA. And let me just zoom out so you can see all this yarn sitting here. This is, I'm going to be using a blue, a yellow, and a pink. These are really fun and happy colors, and they're all the same brand. This color is called Honolulu Pink. The yellow is called Pittsburgh Yellow. And the blue is called Charlotte Blue. So we're going to be using 1 color per strand of our braid. So it's going to be a 3-strand braid. And then we're going to finish it off with the multicolor pom-poms. And I'm going to show you how to do all that. You'll also need a pair of scissors and of course your fingers. So let's get started. So I'm going to start with the blue yarn. We're going to make our first strand of our scarf. We're eventually going to have a pink strand and a yellow strand as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the yarn and just let a tail fall down the front of your hand. Our hand is going to act like our loom and our fingers act like the pegs of our loom. So we're going to be wrapping the yarn around the fingers and create this kind of rope. I have a more detailed video on how to finger knit, and I'll provide the link for that. But if you'd like to learn about finger knitting in more detail or make a little test piece before you begin the project, definitely watch that video as well, because it's helpful and you make kind of a test piece. So what you're going to do is let a few inches hang down. You don't want it to be too short because we're going to be tying this together later. So just a few inches down the front. Then we're going to take the yarn that's attached to the yarn ball, also called the working yarn. We're going to wrap the yarn, go under the index finger, over top of the middle finger, under the ring finger, come around the pinky finger, and then we're going to do the opposite. So we went under here, so we're going to go over the ring finger, under the middle finger, over the index finger, just like that. Okay, so we can kind of get our tail out of the way a little bit better. So then what I like to do is just kind of push everything down a little bit as I'm working. So we're gonna just repeat this. So we have 2 loops on each finger. Okay, we now have 1 loop on each finger. So come around, now go over the middle finger, under the ring finger, over the pinky, come around the pinky, go over, under, over. So we now have 2 loops on each finger. So I like to just kind of get this out of the way. So at this point, we're going to take the bottom loop and lift it up, over, and off our finger. Same thing for the middle finger, up, over, and off. If you need to pull some things snug to snug them up, that's fine too. So lift up, over, and off, up, over, and off. Our first little row here is complete. So again, you can push this stuff down if you need to. Hold this tail at the bottom. So let's grab our working yarn again, and we're just going to do the same thing. Go over, under, come back in the other direction. Wrap it around the pinky, under, over, and then just kind of put that aside, and then we're going to lift up, over, and off. Up, over, and off, up, over, and off, up, over, and off. So we're just going to be repeating this until your strand is as long as you would like it to be. So let's do a few more together, and then we'll rejoin in a moment when our strand is a little bit longer. So let's do this a few more times just to practice. So take your yarn, wrap it around the index finger, under, over, around the pinky, under, over, and back down. Just like that. 2 loops are on the finger. Now we can do our lifting. Lift up, over, and off. Again, we're doing the bottom loops, up, over, and off, up, over, and off, up, over, and off, just like that. Okay, let's do that a few more times. Push everything down, just like that. Wrap it around the index finger, under, over, around the pinky, under, over, and then back down. Okay, so we're just going to keep repeating this over and over and over until our strand is as long as we would like our scarf to be. And actually, you want to make it a tiny bit longer because the act of braiding it, eventually when we're doing that, will shorten it a little bit. So you want to make it a little bit longer than the scarf finished length that you'd like it to be. So let's look at what we've done. So far, all of our work is behind our hand. So if you flip your hand over, you can kind of see what we've been doing. If you give it a little bit of a tug, it looks like a braided rope. It's very, very pretty and easy to do. So I'm going to keep working and make my strand much longer, and we'll rejoin in a little bit when this blue strand has grown significantly. So once your first strand of your braided scarf is as long as you'd like it to be, you can fasten off. Now, I also wanted to mention again to make it just a little bit longer than you'd like your scarf to be, because when you braid your strands together, it's going to draw up the scarf a little bit. So make them a little bit longer than you'd like your scarf to be. Okay, so what you're going to do is take your scissors and then just cut the yarn. And then what we're going to do is run the yarn through each one of these loops on our fingers. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Just like that. Now you can draw them together. And then I like to come back through one more time just to get everything nice and secure. And then just pull tightly like that. And then you can even put a little knot here at the end if you'd like, just to keep everything on there. So what we're going to do now, we have fastened off, is we're going to leave, so at either end of this first strand that we've made, we have a tail. So we're going to leave those tails on because we're going to be using them when we braid the 3 strands to tie everything together. So we're not going to weave those ends in yet. So now we're going to move on to the other colors and make the other strands. So we're now going to repeat the same steps for the yellow strand of our scarf. And you'll do the same thing for the pink strand as well. So now that we have all 3 strands finished, what we're going to do, they're all roughly about the same length. So we're going to start braiding them. So to do that, we're going to take, now we've left our tails because those are going to help us tie everything together. So at one end, take all 3 tails and just go ahead and tie them in a knot. All these knots and the mechanics of our scarf will be hidden by the pom-poms when we're finished. So make sure you get a nice secure knot. I'm just going to do 2 strong knots on mine. So go ahead and tie that. And now we're ready to braid our strands. So what you're going to do, if you've never braided before, you're just taking the strands and just crisscrossing them. And I'm going to do it, you don't want to do it very, very tightly like this, or you're going to have this kind of tight, kind of smushed together braid, and it won't make for a very warm scarf. It'll just kind of be like a rope around your neck. So what I'm going to do is just braid everything very, very loosely like this. And that way too, your stitch work from when you did your finger knitting will show nicely as well. So go ahead and just braid that until you get to the other end. So once you get to the other end, you can just take your other tails and go ahead and tie those into a knot as well. And we're going to trim all this, but we don't want to trim our tails quite yet because those are going to help us to secure the pom-poms onto our scarf. So just put 2 strong knots on the end of that. And then what I want to do here is just kind of open up our braid a little bit, just to make it a little bit wider and more scarf-like instead of a rope. So I'm just kind of opening up the braid and sort of flattening it out a little bit. So the main part of our scarf is now finished. So you're going to leave these tails intact. Next, we're going to make the pom-poms. We're going to make one at either end, and we're going to make them large and fun. And I'm going to use all three colors. Now, if you have a favorite color in your 3-color scarf, you know, you could always do 2 solid pom-poms, but I'm going to show you how to do multicolor pom-poms. And actually, because you're incorporating 3 strands, they are quicker to make as well. So just grab 3 strands of yarn, and you're going to just line them up at the bottom like this, and then take all 3 strands in your hand and just let the tail hang down the front of your hand. Then you're going to wrap the yarn, because we're using very chunky yarn. We're going to wrap around all 4 fingers. Now, I wanted to mention, there are fancy tools out there to make pom-poms. You can use one of those if you prefer. You could also wrap the yarn around a heavy piece of cardstock, but I just use my hands when I make pom-poms. It's quick and easy, and your hand is always around. You don't have to go looking for a tool or anything. So just let the yarn fall down the front and wrap the yarn around all 4 fingers, just like that. So what we're doing is we're creating a bundle, a big thick bundle of yarn. So go ahead and wrap that around. So I went ahead and wrapped mine about 25 times around my hand. If you're doing just 1 strand, you know, multiply that by 3 to do 75 times around your hand. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our ends and let those hang straight down, and then just cut. Next, you can take any of the 3 colors you like. I'm going to grab this yellow and cut a piece of yarn. Now, it might be helpful to do this beforehand, but go ahead and cut a piece of yarn about 12 inches long. We'll slide our yarn out of the way so we don't get everything tangled. And then what we're going to do is take our, now both ends from where we began and where we ended are hanging down at the bottom. So what we're going to do is carefully slip this bundle off of our hand and then just kind of cinch it in the middle so that it looks like that. Then take your yarn and we're going to tie it around our bundle as tightly as possible. Get it nice and tight. Otherwise, when you have your pom-pom, these strands will fall out. So get that very, very tight, just like that. This is one of the challenging things about making a pom-pom, is getting it tight enough, okay? So keep these strands intact. This is what we're going to use to secure it to our scarf. And it's just going to look like a flat, loopy blob, sort of, if you will. So what you're going to do is just take your scissors and cut all the loops. Now be careful not to cut these. Leave these, you might even want to hold them in your hand so you don't lose track of them. So go ahead and cut all of the loops that you see, making sure not to forget any of them. So I'm going to go ahead and cut all my loops, and we'll rejoin in just a moment. So once we have our loops cut, it just looks like a big floppy mess right now, but we still have our tails down here, and then our tails from when we started are longer than our pom-pom. So we need to give our pom-pom a trim just to neaten things up and to make it a little more dense and not as kind of loopy and droopy looking. So what you're going to do is just kind of hold the bundle so all the strands are pointing the same way, and just try and get everything the same length. And you're going to do this a few times, just give it a little haircut. Okay, so then you can kind of open your pom-pom up and see where you need to cut next. So all these are pretty long, so I'm going to cut these next. And a pair of sharp scissors is very, very helpful when you're making pom-poms. And the larger your scissors are, the better. Actually, I could probably stand to have a little bit larger of a pair of scissors, but it's still working out. Okay, So we're just going around and looking for all of the long wild pieces on our scarf. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and finish trimming up my pom-pom. So once you get your pom-poms all trimmed up the way you want them to look, we're ready to attach them. And just as a side note, these pom-poms are about 3.5 inches wide, give or take. So we have a tail. We can use that to attach our pom-pom to the scarf, or we can use the tails from the scarf to attach it. It's totally up to you. And if you've accidentally trimmed these off, you know, just use these tails. So I'm just going to take one of the tails and I'm going to just pass it through the bottom of the scarf. And then I'm just going to tie it right on. I'm going to use a couple of knots. Anytime you have something hanging down the bottom of a scarf like this, you want to get it nice and secure, especially if kids will be wearing it, because it'll get tossed about. So then what you're going to do is these tails now can kind of blend in to our pom-pom if we cut them the same length. So if you go ahead and just trim all these tails from when we made our scarf and made our pom-pom, you just trim those the same length. You can just get them to blend into the bottom, just like that. Now they're more or less hidden, okay? So that's our first pom-pom at the bottom, and this is looking very fun and colorful, a perfect scarf for kids to make and wear. And of course you can always select more neutral colors if you like, but I wanted this to be extra fun. Okay, so we're tying the other pom-pom on, just like that. And then I'm going to just trim my tails. No need to weave them in because we have a big fluffy pom-pom and they'll just blend right in to the rest of it. Okay, so then when you're done, you can kind of, if you have any like little snippets from your pom-pom when you trimmed it, just kind of shake it off a little bit, sweep that away. So what you want to do is stretch it out a little bit, shape it up, fluff up the pom-poms. So our braided pom-pom scarf is complete. And as a side note, this yarn is machine washable too. So if this is going to be a kid's project, that's a great choice of machine washable yarn for this project. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and be sure and click the subscribe button to get all the latest Fiberflux video updates. Thanks again.